Welcome to the review of the Husqvarna Norden 901 Expedition 2024. Oh man, that's a long name. This was a joke. I'm not a rapper. Actually, I am a rapper, a Swedish rapper. I'm Hojsek, the only Swede in Sweden without any Swedish accent. This is gonna be a long day. There's plenty of reviews to be found online about this bike. Maybe not the 2024 model, but this is a review from someone who had no previous experience of adventure biking at all. But that's until Husqvarna let me lend this bike for about a month. This is the last day of me having it. And since then I've rode about 4,000 kilometers, where more than half of that is off-road. So this review is really based on my experience with the bike, coming from a purely supermoto background. And that means that this video might be good for someone who is thinking about switching to an adventure bike, or someone that is just interested in like a common biker perspective of using and riding and having a Husqvarna Norden 901 Expedition 2024. That name is brutally long for a bike. So let's start the review. And I forgot to mention, I'm also from Sweden, and Husqvarna is of course from Sweden, which makes me a reliable source about bikes and so on. So first of all, I want to talk about the design and looks of the Norden 901. It's definitely something unique when it comes to other competitors on the market. It's definitely a bike that sticks out, according to me. You might think something else, you know, we're all different. But the fact that it draws more attention than other adventure bikes is actually something that I have experienced myself. I recently took this bad boy to Norway, and there was a lot of, especially Germans, that came up to me and said, that's a nice looking bike. And I totally agree, it's a super nice looking bike. It's worth to mention that this is the Expedition version, which means that it looks completely different from the regular 901. And if I'm gonna be completely honest, I would consider getting the Expedition just for the looks of it. But the regular version sure looks fine, but I'm very into this style. There's just something about the front that really makes it look like a tank. And I can guarantee you guys, it's really built like a tank as well, with this skid plate being enormous. I think the weight of this is like 15 kilos, it's pure steel. Okay, I'm not really sure about the weight, but it's sturdy. And then we got the round headlight, which I would say gives the bike like a vintage look, but at the same time not vintage, because, you know, I don't want this bike to look vintage, but it sure adds some flavor to the bike. Then with the Expedition version, you get these bag hangers here, the frame for it, and then you get these bags, but we will talk a bit more about these bags later on. And even from the side, it sure looks like a tank. And as I mentioned before, the fact that it looks like a tank is not just a look, it's also built like one. I dropped this bike in Norway during some kind of tornado. Okay, not a tornado, I'm hyping, but there was a lot of wind. So basically, this thing blew over because I didn't use the center stand that this bike is equipped with. I love center stand. Who cares? It adds some weight, of course. It can add some sound as well when you hit some rocks and but I really love it. And this could have saved me from dropping the bike, but the wind took the bike and it just fell because I used the regular kickstand. The bike fell on this and the bag and nothing happened. There's not even a single scratch. Enough said about the design. I think it's super solid. So let's talk about all the nerdy stuff. So, the Norden 901 Expedition comes with a 889cc parallel twin engine that has about 77 kilowatts of power. And this is about equivalent to 105 horsepower. And to put that in perspective, the 701 comes with about 74 horsepower. The torque on this bad boy is 100 Newton meters, which is well enough to wheelie in, like you can power wheelie this thing in third gear, maybe fourth gear if you really swing it, or if you have like a cow back here. It's a 6-speed transmission, which means that it has no reverse gear. Unfortunately. I've only had this thing for 1 month, but I've already spent at least 3 hours janking this shit out of stuff. So a reverse gear would be so nice. Please, Husqvarna. Because if you're alone, you're not gonna get this out of trouble if you get stuck. So speaking about getting stuck, the dry weight of this bike is 214 kilograms. So if we then add the weight of the fuel tank, which is 19 liters, we get the wet weight. Yeah, comment down below the wet weight. And last but not least, the bike comes equipped with the WP Explore suspension, which differs from the regular version that has the regular WP suspension, front and back. And it's pretty funny that Husqvarna says that it's approximately 19 liters. So if you buy one of these, you might get more, but you might get less if you're unlucky. So I think that's enough about the nerdy stuff. So let's talk about the features that comes with this bike. If I were to buy a bike in 2024, I would expect that bike to have a lot of features. Almost to the point that I would be disappointed if the bike didn't have ChatGPT or something.
Write me an essay in Espanol.
Alright, maybe not those kind of features, but I want the bike to not feel like it's from the Stone Age. So, what kind of features does this bike have? Let's start talking about the riding modes. The Norden 901 comes with 4 different riding modes: street, off-road, rain, and Explorer. I always think of Dora the Explorer whenever I read that on the screen. Dora the Explorer mode. So, what does these modes do? Street mode has a linear throttle response with traction control turned on and ABS turned on both in the back and in the front. And this is the mode that I've used mainly for pavement riding and, regular street riding. And this mode just makes sense. It's basically everything turned on, including wheelie control, so you can't wheelie, which is sad for some, good for some. But it's nice to have, all the protection that you can get. And then we have the rain mode, which is basically what it says. It's a mode for rain. This mode gives the bike a reduced peak power. By how much? I don't know, but I guess half the horsepower, who knows? This reduced peak power gives you better control of the throttle and the power, which means that you won't easily slid your back tire and crash, It gives you a more gentle throttle response. And also the traction control in the rain mode hits way earlier than, for example, the street mode. And then we have the off-road mode, which is the mode that I've used the most. It's a mode that has a normal throttle response. It's really something that I feel is familiar coming from the 701. And this mode comes with no ABS in the back, which is nice for off-road riding since you have more control with the brakes. And you can also brake slide into a corner if you want to. And then lastly, we have Dora the Explorer mode. Which is basically just a mode that lets you customize all the settings you want into details. But when turning this mode on, it gives you a preset for the Explorer, which is a bit confusing because it should just let you set the settings you want in the preset. But it doesn't. It comes with a preset that includes a throttle response that is like riding a two-stroke. And this throttle mode is called, in the system, Rally. Whatever that means. I don't know if rally drivers like the two-stroke mode, I don't know. But this is a throttle response I'm not a fan of. I've stalled so many times by accident when I first turned on this mode and I didn't know that it had a different throttle response. So I went off-road, I turned the Dora the Explorer mode on and I stalled time after time after time after time. And I didn't know why until I saw that, throttle is on rally. So as soon as I changed from rally, everything was back as normal. I guess you can get used to the rally mode, but it's just like riding a two-stroke. So you're gonna stall in the low revs if you're not used to it. And especially with a bike that's pretty low volume, like this one, stock, with the stock exhaust, you won't really hear the revs that much. Make sure you change the throttle response to the regular one. And then except all the riding modes, we also have heated grips. Very, very nice. We also have heated butt warmer, whatever that's called, heated seat, I don't know, microwave butt. And there's also a 12-watt outtake here. And behind here, you also have a 5-watt USB-A port. I think that's for loading stuff into the bike, not really sure. So that's basically the features that you will use the most. The system unfortunately doesn't come with a built-in GPS. That is actually something you have to download on your own from your phone, and it works fine actually. But I'll talk more about that later. But if you want to add a GPS, which you probably will, there's a mount here for GPS, which is really nice. And I also forgot to mention that the Expedition version comes with this taller windscreen. So that's the most common features that you will probably use the most. Now we got a solid ground of information about the bike, so let's talk about my personal riding experience with the bike. And I gotta say, the riding experience with this one especially off-road, has been really great. This is my first time ever taking a bike this heavy off-road, and I'm surprised over the fact that you can basically do everything imaginable on a bike this heavy. I don't really see the weight of this thing as something that would hinder me. And once you get to some gravel roads or rocky mountain, you almost forget about the weight. And maybe it's because the tank is all the way down here low that it gives the bike such a good momentum through like turns and corners. I don't know, it's just something that's so nice with the balance of this bike. This bike really won't make any resistance. It just does what it's supposed to do. And with the suspension that I really love, I would even argue that this machine won't make me necessarily slower than, for example, the 701. But if we start comparing like a 501 or a 450 or 300 two-stroke, of course, this one is too heavy to compare with those machines. And the riding experience off-road, standing up, is so nice. I don't really feel the need to have the bars higher up than they already are. For example, on the 701, I can't even stand up and reach the bars. On this one, I could stand like this and reach the bars, no problem. And I'm a tall rider, so the experience as a tall rider has been superb. If I stand like this, it feels super nice. And even sitting down, the bars just feels perfect. And it's a tall bike compared to the regular one. The Expedition is a lot taller. That's why a lot of people buy the regular one and then adds the extra stuff to the regular version because they don't want the tall seat height. I really love it. It's really nice. And the center stand, it's so much fun. I really love having the center stand. So let's talk about some things that I absolutely love about the 901. First on the list is the seat. I absolutely love this seat. It's not too hard, it's not too soft, it's just perfect. The grip is perfect, and when standing up, you get the perfect amount of grip on the sides of this thing. It's really the best motorcycle seat I've ever sat on. Even the times I rode for 10 hours straight, I had no fatigue in my bum. Not at all. Nothing. That's insane. So the seat gets 10 out of 10. It's perfect. I love it. The second thing is something we talked about a bit earlier, is the suspension. Man, I haven't ridden the regular 901, but I would suspect that the Expedition has a lot better suspension. The suspension of this is the most beautiful thing ever. It just floats through everything. It's very, very nice for a heavy bike like this. It's really the suspension that makes you forget the weight of this bike. So, if you got the money, get the Expedition just for the suspension. The next thing on the list is the fuel tank. It's 19 liters, and I did my first real adventure trip now in Norway, and I would be really stressed out if I had less than 19 liters in my tank. Because you know, out there in the wild there's not a lot of gas stations. I'm a city boy myself, so I'm spoiled with having gas stations every 10 minutes or so, or even less. But out there's no gas stations at all. So I'm really glad to have 19 liters when out in the wilderness. So that's a couple of things that I really love. So let's talk about some things that I don't love as much. All bikes have flaws, and I'm gonna mention a couple of them that could be improved. And the first one is the windshield. This is the first bike I've ever ridden with a windshield, and I'm gonna be honest, I expected more from a windshield. I don't really feel that it improves that much, but I might be wrong. I kind of feel like riding the 701 without a windshield at all really gives me less strain on the neck. This might be because how tall I am or other factors, I have no clue, but I feel like the windshield is a bit too narrow. If they would have just added a couple of centimeters, that would probably make a lot of difference. Because I did a test where I put my hands up like this and all the wind noise disappeared. So on longer rides, I even had to stand up for a while to get rid of the throwing punches that the wind makes because of the turbulence that the windshield makes. So by standing up, I get a constant wind in my face, which is easier for my neck for some reason. And then we're gonna talk a bit about the seat heater and also the hand warmer. I've noticed that there is a bug with the heaters that makes it, if you don't do it like full power, it sometimes doesn't really work. Sometimes it goes off and sometimes it goes on. Sometimes it gets really hot on either the heat or on the handlebars. So basically the different strengths that you can choose, either maximum, medium or low. Sometimes they don't work at all, so I usually just put them on maximum or off. Then it works great. And speaking about the heaters, I really wish that they added a button that makes it easy to just turn them both on or turn them both off. Because now as it is, you have to go into them separately and turn them on separately, which is really annoying on the road. I just want to blast them on both at the same time. It takes a lot of time. During my Norway trip, I spent a lot of time riding in the rain. And I noticed that once my bike got really wet and I kept like a constant speed, I started to notice that I got wet from underneath my shin, which was really weird. And I noticed that there's a big hole here that becomes a big wind tunnel that funnels air that catches the water on the handlebars and on the screen and on the windshield and so on, and then blows it up your helmet. And that's not really nice. It's not much and it doesn't happen often, but that's really something that bothered me sometimes. You know, my epic beard got wet. I got so much beard. It ruined my beard styling. So lastly, we're gonna bust some myths that I read online before I got the bike from Husqvarna. Because whenever you're looking to buy something, you always find stuff online that bothers people. And it's not always the case that those rumors are true. And the first thing that I read about this bike that bothered people was their legs getting hot because of the shape on the front of this bike. They said that there was a lot of heat dispensed from the fan sitting here and that there was like a funnel of warm air here. And to be honest, I rode this in like 25 degrees of heat. And I didn't really notice any difference, at least from the 701 and other bikes that I've ridden. It doesn't really get hotter than it usually gets. It might be something that the person that wrote this online had shorts on or something, because then of course it's gonna get warm. But if you have proper riding gear, I didn't feel much heat at all. So I feel that that's not really true. Another thing I found online is a guy that said that he couldn't connect the app to the Bluetooth on the bike. And that's something that I thought for myself, yeah, of course, all these Bluetooth things, they usually suck. But I've tried the GPS so many times and I've shut the bike off and on so many times and it always connects back to the bike. I've had no issues. So there might be something with different phones. I got myself a regular iPhone, so I can only speak for the iPhone users, but I've had no issues at all. It works surprisingly well. The GPS is snappy, because sometimes I feel like some GPS apps, they don't update as quick as they should. So when riding motorcycle, you can like split lanes and so on, and then you need something fast. And this one updates really fast. The only negative thing about it is that there is no interface on here except turn left, turn right, go the second exit on the roundabout. There's only symbols and text. So, who is this bike for? That's a really good question, and I don't think that there's a certain answer. I believe that this bike, at least compared to the competition, is for someone who wants something more unique than the other bikes. Someone who wants more than just the riding experience, but also the looks of it and the feel of it, and also the brand. My impression is that this bike really has a soul connected to it. It's really similar to the 890, but with a personality of its own. And I'm really surprised about what you can accomplish with this bike. But since this is my first adventure bike, it's really hard for me to say who this bike is for. I would simply go to a dealer and try it out, because I'm pretty sure that you will think, just like me, that it's a really special machine. And the funny thing is, I never thought that I would enjoy adventure biking as much as I did in Norway. It's really a close community. I talk to so many adventure bikers and I love the community. It's very similar to the supermoto community and, you know, the bike life community. I'm gonna turn this bike back tomorrow, but hopefully Husqvarna will give me some more time on this bike next season. So big shout out to Husqvarna Scandinavia for letting a fool like me borrow their bike. Let me know in the comments what you think about the Norden 901 and if you would ever consider getting one yourself. Take care. Thanks for watching.